I finally finished Baldur's Gate 3, and here's my general review and how I found it as a disabled player. Before we start, the accessibility part of this review will have no major plot spoilers, but after that there will be some spoilers, so watch out. I'm ashamed to admit that I'd never played a Baldur's Gate game before this, and I'd also never completely finished a full campaign of D&D. I'd always got started, created characters, and got used to some basic principles, but never fully got into it because it was hard to find a group of people to play with for that long. So this was almost completely new territory for me, but I came into this knowing that it was new and that it might be a challenge for my little ill brain. Now usually when I know I'm going to be late to playing a game, I like to search for spoilers and find out as much information as possible, but this time around I saw information from before release and I knew that I wanted to save it until I could eventually play, so I went completely spoiler free up until I was able to play it in February, and I am so glad that I did because it was so worth the 6-month wait. So let's get on to the accessibility part of this review. I'm going to preface this part of the review by saying that I am just one disabled person and all disabled people will have different access requirements and experiences with the game. Most of what I require comes under what is called cognitive accessibility. So let's start with the negatives, and oh boy is this game overwhelming. As someone who is multiply neurodivergent and also chronically ill, I struggle with things such as memory, processing large amounts of information, and also decision paralysis. I came into this knowing that every single aspect of my gameplay would be affected by the choices I made, and I've enjoyed plenty of games with branching storylines that depend on the player's choices before. But I felt overloaded because I not only had to think about how every tiny choice could possibly impact the story and my gameplay, but also about multiple other things at the same time, such as equipping the best gear, or learning what different spells and attacks do, and as someone who is kind of new to D&D, just learning how the game works. I think it's absolutely amazing that a game can be so flexible and allow players to create individual stories and experiences, but whilst being amazing, it was so overwhelming for me. To make it less overloading, I did end up save scumming a lot just to test out decisions and take the stress off it a little bit.
If you could see anything in me, what would it be?
My enemy's suffering, I don't know.
Pathetic.
Yeah.
A poor choice.
What?
You will be purged.
What does that mean? Come back. What? What are you?
Get back.
We're gonna reload. And you can play with friends so that you're not managing an entire party by yourself because your friends can make their own choices, but I didn't have anyone to play with. I also found it hard to process and learn what things do and get used to the UI. It was very overwhelming starting the game and having a complex looking menu available right from the start. For a game of this size and with so much freedom, I was very much thrown right into it with not much idea of what to do, and it felt very intimidating. I would have really appreciated some hints and more in-depth tutorials near the start of the game just to explain combat and what different parts of the menu do. Larian Studios do say that Act 1 of the game, which is roughly 30 to 40 hours long, is basically a gigantic tutorial, and they are definitely right in that it throws you right into the gameplay and helps you get used to things before it gets harder, but there are also some key characters and some key decisions that can be made in Act 1 that can affect your gameplay further down the line in Act 2 and Act 3, and I would have liked to have been able to make these choices and figure things out fully before making game-making decisions. I also found Act 3 of the game incredibly overwhelming, not because of its difficulty or anything like that, but purely because of the sheer amount of side quests that are in one very small area. I know they're side quests, so technically you can ignore them if you wanted to, but some of them are framed as ones that you should complete urgently, and the amount of quest markers on your map can quickly make things confusing. Just look how many quest markers there are. I had no idea which I should complete first because of impact on main story, and it felt incredibly overwhelming navigating the lower city with so much NPC dialogue going on in the background, the damn spellcasters and the paperboy shouting outside Sorcerer's Sundries, and then just the massive amount of side quests to contend with on top of that. If the quests were spread out more, it wouldn't have been quite so bad. Visually, I also found that a lot of rock faces weren't clearly marked as being interactable, so there were quite a few times where I got stuck in an area for a bit purely because I didn't realise that I could climb up a rock face. You can press the Alt key and highlight items which are interactable, which I found very handy, but the only downside to this is that you do have to press and hold the button. This isn't something that you can toggle on and off and just leave it. I also found the minimap hard to use and understand at the start of the game, and it wasn't entirely accurate to my location in the real world, but locking it so that the map stays oriented to north did really help me with that, and you can do that in the settings of the game. Now on to the positives. Firstly, the control layout is fully remappable for keyboard, and I didn't use it myself as I played on balanced for the entirety of my first playthrough, but as of patch 5 that came out in December, there is now a custom difficulty mode where you can make certain things harder or easier depending on your preferences, so you can customize your experience if that is something that you would like to do. You can also adjust the difficulty while you're playing without having to restart the fight or the part of the game that you're on, so say if you're fighting a boss and you realise halfway through that you've absolutely screwed it, then you can whack it on Explorer or Balanced or whatever for the rest of the fight, and then change it back afterwards. Of course, if you're trying to get the achievement for completing it on Tactician, or if you're doing Honor Mode, this does then void your progress towards the achievements. If you do something stupid, it also automatically puts you into turn-based mode so that you can have time to think. I cannot tell you how many silly decisions that I have made in this game, and being automatically placed into turn-based mode just gave me time to sit there and just assess the situation, have regrets about what I've done, and then carry on. Is this the way to Withers Crypt? Does Withers have a last name? Are you sus? Okay, the sarcophagus was sus. What's he gonna do to me? Oh, there's shit on the walls. Okay. We are gonna get out of here. That's what we're gonna do. We are all gonna dash. We might just be out of the way. Let's see what happens. Yeah, okay, we're all good. I also rely on subtitles a lot of the time to help with audio processing issues, and at first I found them quite hard to read, but there are plenty of resizing and shadow boxing options in the settings that really help sort this out. You can also change the font size of any books that you pick up in game, and there are colorblind mode options in the accessibility section of the settings. However, it is also worth noting that many of these accessibility features, such as colorblind mode and adjusting the font size of books, were not available at launch and were added in later patches. Also, even though you can adjust the size of the subtitles and books, this does not extend to tooltips and menus, and these can be quite difficult to read because of contrast with the background and the size of the font. In terms of controls, it's also really nice that you can do most things with the point and click of a mouse, so it wasn't overly taxing on me. As someone with an energy limiting condition, this meant that I could play for significantly longer than I have done other games. Now onto my review for the game as a whole. I'm going to apologise in advance for how long this could get. I'm going to try and keep it short for time purposes, but honestly there is so much good stuff that I could say about this game, it's going to be difficult to keep it short. First off, I really enjoyed creating my custom character, and I was especially fond of the Dragonborn customization options. I spent so long just changing different colours and then turning around the camera to see how they reflected in the light on the scales. It was just gorgeous. I really enjoyed having the freedom to choose whatever combination of gender identity, voice, body and face that I wanted. You can also give your character vitiligo or heterochromia. However, I was disappointed that all the body types available are either thin or are mega ripped. I would have thought that you would have been able to have larger body types. Also, whilst it's great that you can choose whatever combo of body, face, voice, and even genitals that you want, I was surprised that you can't customise your chest in such a queer-inclusive game. Now on to the characters. I could talk about every single character for so long, but as I've already said, I'm gonna have to keep it short for time purposes. It was so hard to choose favourites because they all have their own little quirks, and the acting is so incredible that they just all have something about them that makes each character so great in their own ways. I specifically enjoyed Samantha Bayard as Karlach. I found I related to Karlach's character the most, and Sam was incredible. I thought they gave a really emotional performance. In an interview, Sam also said their experience of chronic illness paralleled with Karlach's character and the fact that she's living on borrowed time. They also said they played Karlach as non-binary and centered sapphic women whilst playing her. As a non-binary chronically ill person myself, having Sam play Karlach as one of my favourite characters really meant a lot to me. Aside from this, Karlach also has some really funny lines that are incredibly well delivered.
But Karlach's still breathing.
Yeah, 'cause she's actually really pretty chill.
Shits than you, Mizora.
It was those who were buried after.
I've taken more pleasant shits than you.
lady.
That's incredible. After Karlach, Gale and the narrator are probably my favourite characters. The delivery of some of Gale's and the narrator's lines made me laugh so much. In particular, I'm a big fan of
You claim victory over the squirrel, though you're not sure why you were fighting to begin with.
Tara! That can't be you, can it?
If what is happening is what I think is happening, and it's because you licked a dead spider, the time might just have come when you and I should split ways.
I've also been a fan of Neil Newbon's work since I first played Detroit Become Human in 2018, and he was absolutely incredible as Astarion, especially during the entire scene where you can kill Cazador Sar. I thought that was so well done. Astarion is another character with many hilarious lines which are brilliantly delivered.
Of course! What fun! I'm going to fucking kill you.
The party banter between companions is also incredible. Shadowheart in particular has some absolute bangers when annoying Astarion and Gale, and Lazar's bluntness and how she doesn't beat around the bush when she says things also makes for some great moments.
Provoke the blade. And suffer it.
Yeah, it's will time! Provoke the blade and suffer its sting. What an incredible intro. All the actors were amazing in their roles, and the storylines and side quests relating to each character were also really interesting and impactful. I know I've already spoken about how I felt seen through Karlach and her story, and as a fan it's been great to see how others have felt seen by different characters and their backstories. I also want to take a moment for the mocap work. Alyona Baranova, one of the performance directors for the game, said they used motion capture from 248 actors. I think that's why I enjoy every single character so much, because you can really see the actors' emotions and the tiny little details that they put in that just make each character stand out. Even little interactions with NPCs, you can see the little movements that just make the characters so much deeper. The story is absolutely brilliant, and I love games that have branching storylines because of how replayable they are. I'm currently playing through for the second time, and I'm having so much fun discovering cutscenes, characters, and voice lines that I didn't get the first time round. It means I still have the familiarity of playing a game that I love, but I'm also just constantly surprised by the sheer amount of content and just how many choices there are that you could possibly make. Even interactions that I've done the first time round, coming at it now playing as a different class, there are so many different dialogue options that I can choose, and so you can often never really get the same conversation twice. Is that the end of the song?
That's it!
It is. Oh, is she gonna perform it? I've never got this scene before. I only know the music, but I've never got the scene. Wow, I've never talked to Alfira this much. Last time I turned up, said she was shit, and then walked off. The only critiques that I have story-wise are that I wish Will and Karlach had more content. Will in particular felt very brushed aside to me compared to the depth of story that other characters had, especially considering how much his personal quest and his story ties in with the main story of the game. I think it would have been great, say, if we had some cutscenes of 17-year-old Will fighting the Tiamat cultists and signing the contract with Mizora, like how we got flashbacks for Shadowheart when she was saved from the wolves by the Sharons. I was hoping it was going to let me ask more about why he took the pact, because I really like Will's story, and I didn't understand the magnitude of how bad it was when I first played. Because obviously when you first play, he's just like, oh yeah, I stopped some people from summoning Tiamat from going into the city. Now, I did not have a load of Dungeons and Dragons knowledge before playing this, so I had absolutely no idea who Tiamat was. I saw a photo of Tiamat. Giant, I don't know if it's a dragon. I'm going to assume so, but it's got loads of heads in that. Massive fella. It was a good job. Thank you, William, for your service to Baldur's Gate. He did a decent job. And I don't think that magnitude is stressed enough. Will also doesn't get a say in whether you sign the new contract to save his father or break his pact in Act 3. You just make the choice for him and there's no option to let him decide for himself, whereas other companions can make their own decisions and then you can step in if you want to. It also would have been nice if there was the opportunity to face down Mizora in a boss fight like some of the other companions can. You know, let my boy Will have his revenge. I also wish there were more ending options for Karlach besides her ending up in Avernus, blowing up, or becoming a Mind Flayer. It would be nice if there was a way to fix her engine so that she can have a truly happy ending. I know in the epilogue, if you do choose that Karlach goes to Avernus with Will, she does come back and they say that they are on track to finding a fix for her engine, but it would be really nice if we could get that moment and that performance on screen. Anybody who knows me also knows that I'm a very big enjoyer of video game soundtracks, and I think Borislav Slavov absolutely smashed it out of the park with the Baldur's Gate 3 soundtrack. My favourite scene in terms of soundtrack is when you free the night song. I thought that was just beautiful and gorgeous, and I'm not lying at all when I tell you that every time I see that scene or I hear the music, I am on the edge of shedding a tear. Oh, and also, can we take a moment for Raphael's final act? How iconic is it that Raphael sings his own boss fight music? Also, if you wanted evidence just how much I love the soundtrack, Borislav Slavov has been my top artist on Spotify for the past 3 months. I have since checked this, and it turns out that he is actually now my top artist of the past year. To finish up, Baldur's Gate 3 really deserved winning all of the major Game of the Year awards, and the negative points do not take away from the fact that this is a brilliant and gorgeous game, but they are a sign that even top titles have room to improve, especially when it comes to cognitive accessibility and taking cognitive accessibility into account when thinking about inclusive design. On a personal level as well, Baldur's Gate 3 is the first game that I've been able to properly enjoy and focus on and play all the way through since my health has improved after being unwell for quite a long time and not being able to play any games. And I am so happy that my return to regular gaming was through this gorgeous game. I am so grateful to everyone who worked on this game. It is incredible, and I cannot accurately describe with words just how much I love it and appreciate the work that has gone into it to make Baldur's Gate 3 what it is. That concludes my video on how I found Baldur's Gate 3 as a disabled player, and also my general review of it. If you'd like to see more from me, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can find me on Instagram and TikTok where I post shorter form content about disability and gaming, and you can also follow me on Twitch where I'm regularly streaming Baldur's Gate 3 currently. Thanks for watching.